As generative AI comes on board and starts to change how we work, we're going to see some occupations that get augmented, and others are going to be disrupted, and then there's a few that are going to be insulated. So like a good example of that I always give is the idea that the locksmith, the physical therapist, the nurse, the doctor, these are all roles that are likely to be somewhat insulated from generative AI. Sure, eventually you'll be using it, probably in some way, shape, or form, but it's not going to change 90% of what you do. The flip side is there are roles that are going to be disrupted. We often see things like librarian, legal clerk. These are roles where you can imagine that a lot of the tasks could be performed by generative AI if it comes to summarizing data. So there's a range of outcomes, but it's really an opportunity for people to think about how do they upskill themselves as opposed to fearing that they're going to be replaced by a robot.
What are the occupations that will benefit the most?
There are a lot of occupations that are going to benefit from generative AI, and this is because these are occupations that rely on both human skills and, say, skills that maybe AI or generative AI can replicate. And when you have that mix, that's really, I think, the sweet spot in the workplace going forward, because it's that synergy between human and AI. So an example of that would be, imagine user experience technician, imagine web designers, imagine software engineers. They're going to, of course, shed some tasks to generative AI, and others are going to spend more time doing the more interesting, creative, maybe logical thinking and higher cognitive load work.
When do you think it'll reach a stage where everybody needs to learn how to use AI? I mean, just like now, pretty much everyone needs to use the internet in order to, I guess, apply for a job. Like, when do you think it'll get to that stage?
I think that we're going to get to a stage where we're not saying, oh, I need a head of AI, but we're going to assume everybody kind of gets the idea of what AI is and how to integrate it into their work system or their processes. We're not there yet. That's probably 5 or 7 years away. But in the meantime, I think we just need to kind of get started.
So Karen, AI could be a big time saver for employers. For instance, they don't have to sift through as many CVs to find the perfect candidate. But do you think AI will necessarily lead to the best candidate being hired? Because there have been cases of AI bias. For example, with Amazon, they did trial the use of AI and it discriminated against women and it put forward more male CVs.
I can't speak to what happened at Amazon, but what I can tell you is the idea behind these tools is to help the recruiters, for example, actually widen the net of potential applicants. So if you imagine that you could ask a tool to help you find as many possible potential candidates. And by the way, part of this is not just focusing on people who maybe had the role before, but people who just have the skills. So if you start doing a job search using tools to help you become more effective and you're focused on skills and not what was my prior degree or my prior job title, you actually widen the pool of potential applicants. And typically what happens is you actually pull in more women than men and often sometimes more underrepresented candidates than you had before. So we're actually seeing the potential for it to go in the other way. Now you raise a risk, that is a valid one, and I think the best fail-safe against that is to always have the human at the forefront. So this is a tool to be used by recruiters to help them move faster to reach more people. It's not a tool to weed people out. It's a tool to let recruiters spend more time finding the exact perfect fit and less time maybe crafting the same message over and over to potential candidates. And by the way, a lot of the jobs of the future are ones that we haven't even conceived of yet. When we look right now at let's say the 10 fastest growing roles, most of them didn't exist 20, 25 years ago.
And what are these fastest growing roles you mentioned?
A lot of what we're seeing are themes where a lot more roles that are oriented towards sustainability and green skills, more roles oriented towards diversity and inclusion, and also more roles oriented towards AI and generative AI. And then at the same time, there's lots of roles that have always existed that are still the fastest growing. A lot of healthcare roles, for example, construction roles. These are also quite popular.
Have you noticed that there's been a big rise in the number of job ads requiring AI skills?
We've seen this enormous increase in job ads that are looking for ChatGPT or generative AI skills. And in the past year alone, it's increased 21 times. Just huge. This is a global number, it's huge, but it's everywhere. And it just speaks to employers' sort of desire to start bringing in talent that can help them figure out how do they integrate, let's say, generative AI, if it's ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever it might be, into their own processes and systems. And so if last year was the year where businesses were trying to build awareness around the potential of this tool, this is the year where they're trying to build towards adoption of it. So they're starting to really look for that. And at the same time, we're seeing members increasingly add skills. So Australia is adding skills, I think, around 9% growth a year of members who are saying, hey, I've got a little bit of AI experience, I've got a little bit of generative AI experience. So we're seeing that grow as well.
So I'm sure a lot of people probably have thought, I need to learn some AI skills in order to protect myself from being replaced by machines. So practically, what can they do? What AI skills do they need to develop?
Yeah, it's daunting, right? It feels like suddenly, do I need to be the master of like AI technologies? The answer is no, you don't. It's really helpful to be a little bit more literate with some of these tools, but you don't need to be the person who's training the large language model unless that's the role that's required. So a lot of it comes down to just micro-learning, just small opportunities to increase your understanding of how it works. What we're seeing is a lot of people start by just taking a course online. And in fact, we saw a 5 times increase in people last year starting to take AI courses on our platform just to get a little bit more familiar, like AI in business, what is prompt engineering anyway? These kinds of little courses that take less than an hour give you a sense of like how might you use it in your own work without being an overwhelming, daunting task to suddenly become a master of AI.
I'm interested in your thoughts. So on AI bias. So Google recently has been trialing its Gemini app, and it's led to some interesting results. So it's been generating historically inaccurate images. For example, racially diverse Nazis and racially diverse founding fathers. And Google's copped a lot of flack for that, for which it has apologized. So is that a warning sign of relying on AI too much? It's not necessarily the most reliable thing right now.
I think where we are in this stage is at a very early phase of development and adoption of these new technologies. And speaking as a Black American woman, I'm well aware that there's bias in lots of things. It's not just this one new technology. So I think the most important thing is to be extremely attentive to the risks. And this is something that's incumbent upon all of us as we start to explore how can we use this tool and hopefully for good, because it is just a technology. It should be a tool in our hands. It shouldn't be something that perpetuates bias. But I think there's a lot of potential for AI to really help us. And of course, there's risks too, and those are things we need to be attentive to.
And final word on AI. Do you think the mass adoption of AI in the future will create more jobs or cause more jobs to be lost?
If I use history as a guide, I would say it's going to create more jobs. It doesn't mean that there won't be any jobs lost, but on the net, there will be more jobs created. An economist like me would tell you it's really important to think about those who might be bearing the cost disproportionately of a transition because of technology, but net, it will create more jobs, and it'll create jobs we can't even imagine.
Well, Karen Kimbrough, thank you very much for your insight.
Thank you.